Welcome back to the Athlete Family Podcast, where we break down everything preparation for performance in both sport and life. So today we are going to break down our initial pillar of our preparation hierarchy. So this is all about awareness. If you followed along with some of the nutrition content over the years, I have 3 A's that we typically go through when it comes to our coaching. And the first one is always awareness. The reason being is that obviously it's very hard to make any change if we're not aware. So whether it's aware of just our current eating habits, we want to make sure we know what's going on in our current day-to-day so that we can possibly make changes and improve it over time. So load awareness is going to be our number one pillar that we're talking about today. So this means schedule awareness, knowing what is coming up. The worst thing we see with young athletes is just that lack of preparation, because even though, they've had their games scheduled, this type of thing, it's that lack of preparing for it. And then, being in this pinch where they don't have the right fuel to fuel them for a tournament or back-to-back games or practices, or, understanding that we have these windows in our schedule where we can, help to set ourselves up for success later on. So what is awareness and load awareness? What does it look like?
So when considering load awareness, you want to really consider what your schedule for the week ahead is, for example. So it can depend on a game day, a practice day, a heavy load day, or a rest day, for example. And you want to consider what your output will be on those days and see how you can plan ahead of time to see what food you can prep for then and make sure you have enough fuel to fuel that input as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's get into some examples of this. So let's look at an entire week. So if we look at Monday through to Sunday, if we're looking at that week, obviously the preparation, if you have 3 practices, for example, maybe it's Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and then your game days are Friday, Saturday, or Friday, Saturday, Sunday, possibly. Or maybe you have another sport as well. So there's some days that are really heavy where you have another sport and then you go to your practice right from there, or you have a training session for your sport and then you have practice as well. So these are very realistic schedules these days. And the biggest issue we find again is preparation. So planning ahead, we recommend that, looking at awareness, planning on the Friday so that we know going into the weekend that we are prepared, because those are usually the heaviest output competition days, games, that type of thing. So on Friday or even Thursday night, whatever works, or Thursday during the day, of what does that look like for the following week and how am I best going to prepare myself? So if I have 3 practice days, what does that look like? Typically on practice days, they should be still a good amount of food.
Yeah. Still got it. Your output is still a lot throughout those periods during that practice game. Maybe not as much as a game day or those heavy loaded tournament weekends, for example, but you still need enough fuel in before that practice session to make sure you're energized throughout it all.
Yeah. And then also we want to look at, game days and heavy competition. So these days would be, again, maybe you have 2 games in a day if it's a tournament, or 3, maybe more than that. Hopefully not more than that.
Hopefully not.
And then you want to look at, okay, again, do you have these 2 training sessions within a day or a training session and a practice? And then you have your rest days. So those days where maybe you don't have a lot of activity, maybe you do have, a strength training workout or something going on, but it's a lighter day overall. So typically on competition days, that's when you want to up things like your carbohydrates. The goal is performance in those situations. So, examples would be really easily digested food that you've had previous. So don't try new things on game day. It's probably the number one rule of sports nutrition. We want to make sure we've been there before. We're comfortable with the food. So easily digestible carbohydrates. We want lower fiber options too. So eating a bunch of raw vegetables on game day, not recommended based on the high fiber content. We know fiber is important for athletes, but timing is everything. So we want to make sure that, maybe on the rest days and the practice days is when you can focus on, those other high fiber foods. And then practice days, we still want a moderate amount of carbohydrates to fuel our performance, moderate amount of protein, and again, just making sure that we're paying attention to how we're feeling on those days. So if you know, for example, that overnight oats are a great breakfast option for you on a game day or practice day, then we want to make sure that we have prepared that and have the ingredients for it going into that weekend session. So load awareness is everything. And I also want to speak to the parents, because if you're the ones that are preparing the food, if you're the ones that also have a full work schedule, you have other children who have other, responsibilities and other activities going on. And, maybe again, you have certain activities. So planning it out as a whole family is so important. So what major load or stressors do you have that you have to prepare for leading up? So for young athletes, it's going to be those game and competition days. For parents, it might be, your training sessions. It might be a really important work meeting. So doing this as a family, sitting down and looking at like, okay, what are those red high days? What are those medium days? Let's call them orange days. And then what are those green days, which are more light days that you do have a little bit more time for preparation?
Yeah. You got to take advantage of those days when you do have them, which I'm sure is pretty rare for parents out there, but take advantage. And if you can sit down for those few hours, if you have, for example, try to meal prep or try to get some meals in there that you could plan for the tournament ahead or for the game ahead for your kid or for a busy work day, definitely take advantage of that when you can.
Yes, and we will break down these prep windows. It's actually part of our next pillar and how to implement this. But the number one thing is just bring awareness. Like, what does your week look like right now? What's realistic for you? Maybe, it's not a Friday and it's a Saturday where you can get grocery delivery or go to the grocery store. Be realistic with what works for you and your family. But take into consideration that we have to look at all of the schedules, not just your athlete. And I know that's tough as a parent. I am one as well, and I have toddlers, and I'm not at that phase yet. But, I am very cognizant of like, okay, what's going on with the entire family, because it is going to affect what we have for, meals that week. Are we doing slow cooker meals on days that nobody's going to be home until 8 p.m. after a practice? Are we doing, meals on the go? And what does that look like when it comes to a healthy meal? So, for example, my husband and I, we will look at like if he has to work late, looking at, okay, then that day, because I have 2 toddlers running around, we're actually going to do a slow cooker meal or a sheet pan meal where literally everything's prepped and I just throw it in the oven or it's done at the end of the day. So schedule awareness is the number one thing we want you to think about. And we've created a resource.
We have a blank template out there that we created you can use and get an idea of how to schedule for the week ahead. So plan each day, label it as a practice day or a game day or a heavy load day. And it could be a busy day for you at work, for example, as well. Label each day that you have ahead on the Friday, for example, so you can see what's coming up and then try to schedule your plan out from there moving forward.
Absolutely. And this is a tool that we use, and it's going to take time too. Awareness is the number one step to the change. So it's going to take time to understand what each week is going to look like and work with your family. So again, you might have a really heavy day and another kid has a light day. And so you're going to have to adjust and have options for those individuals on those days as well. And then as a parent too, take your schedule into consideration. When are your hard training days? What are your stressors throughout the week? Do you have any, travel planned? What is going on in your life so that you can better support your athletes for what they're going through as well?